Oh.
Yeah.
Breaks on the Friday.
It's okay. Yeah. No, I hear you. And I, exactly. Good morning, everybody. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I'll note for the record that Ms. Chappelle is excused, and good morning to Mr. McCracken and Ms. Stickett.
Morning.
All right, we will begin with our agenda. Now move the acknowledgement of Secretary of State Directive 2023-18, the revised form of the ballot for November 7th, 2023 general election. Second by Mr. McCafferty. We did receive a summary of that in our packet. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. On the ballot, the chair recognizes Mr. Brian Clary.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Before you should have a copy of the certification report and the official results from the September 12th primary election that we just held. There were a total of 358 ballots tabulated during this election, and they break down as follows. There was 176 ballots cast on election day. 155 ballots were cast vote by mail. 17 ballots were cast early in person. There were 4 provisionals. There were no post-election days, and there were six post-vote mail ballots cast. On to the vote by mail and early in-person summary. There was a total of 221 ballots issued during the vote by mail and early in-person voting period. Of those ballots, 178 or 81.45% were returned and counted by the ballot department. There were a total of 2 challenge or late vote by mail EIP ballots, resulting in a 1.11% challenge rate for this election. And below that, you have a breakdown of the challenge, 2 challenges. And I'll take any questions on the vote by mail or early in person that you may have at this time. Hearing none.
I have none.
We'll move on to provisional voting summary. It's just as exciting. A total of 5 provisional ballots were cast during this election. Of those ballots, 4 or 80% were valid and tabulated by the ballot department. There was 1 invalid provisional ballot, resulting in a 20% rejection rate for this election. And then below that, you have the rejection that is not registered. There were no remakes for this election. There were also no overvotes for this election. There was a total of 4 precincts involved in the election. Voter history is complete. It is being proofed and get ready to send out. Ballot reconciliation is ongoing. There are no automatic recounts for this election. The requested recount deadline will be Monday, October 2nd at 4 p.m. The post-election audit for this election will be conducted in conjunction when we do the November election. Date to be determined. And we will randomly select the race that we're going to audit today. And I will take any questions you may have on the September results.
I have none. Fellow board members?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clary. So I move the authorization to approve the remake of the optical scan ballot from the September 12th, 2023 primary election. Second by Mr. McCaffrey. All in favor, aye. Aye. I move the authorization to approve absentee ballots from the September 12th, 2023 primary election. Second by Mr. McCaffrey. All in favor, aye. Aye. I move the authorization to approve provisional ballots for the September 12th, 2023 primary election. Second by Mr. McCaffrey. All in favor, aye. Aye. Guys have it, and I move the acknowledgement of the pre and post-test results of the vote tabulation system from the September 12th, 2023 primary election. Second by Mr. McCaffrey. All in favor, aye. Aye. The ayes have it. And I move the certification of the official results of the September 12th, 2023 primary election. Second by Mr. McCaffrey. All in favor, aye. The ayes have it. And move the acknowledgement of the date, time, and place of the post-election audit for the September 12th, 2023 primary election. And as Mr. Clary pointed out, this audit will be conducted in conjunction with the November 7th, 2023 general election post-election audit.
That's correct. All we must do now is randomly roll the dice so we can select odd even.
That'll be a different. So do I do that? Okay. For the record, odd is Garfield Heights Council Ward 2, and even is Maple Heights Council District
correct.
Ward 6. And it's a 4.
Even if it.
Even. Henry Curtis the fourth.
Thank you.
All right, so it will be Maple Heights Council District 6, and the motion is before us on the floor.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCarthy, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. And I move the acknowledgement of the ballot proofs for the November 7th, 2023 general election in accordance with the ballot proofing policy approved by the board at the March 12th, 2021 board meeting.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCaffrey, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clary.
Thank
And
you.
on the candidate and petition services, number 5. I move to acknowledge the following candidate withdrawal from the November 7th, 2023 general election. That's Newburgh Heights Mayor Adam Mazer, nonpartisan. And for the record, he withdrew after the 70th day prior to the election. His name will remain on the ballot, but those votes will not be tallied, nor will they be reported. And notices to inform the voters of the withdrawal will be posted in the voting booths on election day and provided with the vote by mail ballots. There's a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCaffrey, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. And on to agenda item 6. We'll now engage in a discussion relative to East Cleveland Charter number 48. And the chair recognizes Director Palmer.
Good morning, everyone. Just a little bit of background information regarding this charter issue. How we got this issue to the ballot is that the East Cleveland Clerk of Council, Eric Brewer, had timely filed with the Board of Elections a resolution certifying that this be placed onto the ballot. And we got that filed with our office. We went through our process, working with Secretary of State's office on finalizing ballot language, and then we went and we presented this charter amendment along with all other charter amendments at a notice open meeting of the board, in which the board certified this and other issues to the November ballot. Then, as part of our operational process, once we get the proofing completed of the ballot language, the ballot department, we send staff's emails to all the various municipalities, those charter issues and questions for the municipality, just to make sure that in fact everything looks correct and in line with the resolution or legislation as passed. At that point in time, staff were notified that from Willa Hemmons in East Cleveland that this was actually vetoed by the mayor. The documentation that we had presented and filed, timely filed with us, did not indicate that. So this language is on the ballot. There was a UOCAVA voter in East Cleveland in which we mailed a ballot to that, or sent a ballot to that individual when UOCAVA opened last Friday. And again, based on the information filed with us, was in order, and that's why we did what we did. And now this new piece of information was brought to light. So that's why we're here for a discussion.
Okay, thank you, Director. Mr. Bussing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the board has received this certification from Eric Brewer requesting that this matter be placed on the ballot. Willa Hemmons requests that it be removed. And the justification for that reasoning is, like Director Bellotti said, was that the mayor vetoed the legislation. In support of that contention, Director Hemmons provided a copy of the legislation with a veto message dated the 10th of August, and then the legislation copy was signed shortly after it was adopted by council. And I think it comes down to whether or not, under the charter of the city of East Cleveland, to effectuate a veto,
It states in 113E, if the mayor does not approve it, being the legislation, he or she shall return it with a statement of his or her objections to council, who shall enter the mayor's objection in its journal. The documentation information that the board has received is that the mayor did not return the adopted legislation. I think there are some ancillary disputes over who is legitimately a council person that's pending in front of the 8th District. Court of Appeals number 23-112477. But I don't perceive that as something for the board to resolve. That is an ongoing dispute. The council is empowered under its charter to find the language. Essentially, the council is empowered to qualify and determine its membership. To the extent I understand, the position of council is that they've seated 2 council persons that are in dispute, and they've appointed Eric Brewer as clerk. So I don't know if there's anything I do not think there's anything for the board to resolve in that dispute. It's ongoing in the Court of Appeals. I think we need to accept what is being represented to the board as the situation in East Cleveland and move forward based on those facts.
Thank you. Board?
Also, I did notice that the resolution, it looks like it passed 4-1, so 4 out of 5 council members approved it. And I think in the language of that, if I'm remembering, I think that you referred to charter section like 113, I think, which talks about the veto power and how it has to be returned. And then I think they can override the veto, I thought, by 4/5 anyway, 4 out of 5 votes.
Yeah, it's kind of a curious
So
situation.
which they already had. So, you know what I mean? That's a question I had.
To place a charter amendment on, and this is my reading of East Cleveland's charter. You need to pass an ordinance or a resolution by 4/5.
Right.
And then to override a veto, you also have to adopt or override it by a 4/5 majority.
Right.
So I think you still need to go through that process. I don't know if a councilperson will change their mind based on
Right.
the mayor's justification for the veto. So I still think there needs to be a second vote to override a veto,
Right.
but first you need a legitimate veto in the first place.
Great. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah.
Thank you. To help us govern our conversation, it would be helpful if we heard a few things from the folks involved. I will ask if the mayor is present or representative thereof.
Yeah.
So there being no representative of the mayor's office, then I will ask is our clerk Brewer present or a representative here? With the chair to recognize Mr. Brewer. This is not a hearing, but we will, for the record, swear you in, and Mr. Brewer, if you would state for the record your name and then your residence, and then the report of this swear you in.
Gotcha. The name is Eric J. Brewer, BREWER, residence 3537 East 151st Street, Cleveland, Ohio.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay, would you like to just make a statement?
just want to make one notation to the board. I think you got 2 pieces of that legislation that dealt with the charter change amendment. Excuse me, the charter change amendment. The one that the mayor sent to you is fraudulent. It is a copy. It is not the original legislation. It is only signed by him, no other officer of the city. My signature is not on it. No members of council, and it doesn't record a vote. I sent you all a copy of the legislation that council enacted, the authentic legislation. The mayor did not return his veto in the manner spelled out by the charter. He did not address it to the council president. He didn't send it to me. He just emailed it out to a bunch of people. I got it days later through other sources. So the council did not have to override a veto that wasn't issued in compliance with the charter. And again, this is fraudulent legislation. I mean, this is clearly not authentic. And I provided you all with a copy of the authentic legislation. I've asked as well because we are dealing with this in another matter with the mayor where he submitted fraudulent information to the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission. They're investigating that now. And I'm just asking that since this is fraudulent, I would ask that you all refer this to the prosecuting attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Members of the board, any questions you have for Mr. Brewer?
Let's put Jay Moore.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And to the extent that Mr. Brewer knows, who does council recognize as its members?
It recognizes Juanita Gowdy, the president, Patricia Blood-Kowiak as the vice president, Corinne Stevenson, Latik Shabazz, and Antoine Billings. Antoine Billings and Latik Shabazz have each complied with their Ohio Ethics Commission filing reports. The two that the mayor recognizes, Mark McLean and Nate Martin, have not. He has been paying them despite council having the power to judge, to be the judge, the sole judge of its own affairs and the qualifications of its members. And I think the prosecutor referenced that section of the charter correctly.
And Mr. Chairman, one follow-up question.
Please, Mr.
There was reference to an email that transmitted the mayor's veto message. Do we have a copy of that, or who was that provided to?
It was provided to, I believe, Corinne Stevenson and Mansell Baker. He considers Mansell Baker to be the secretary of council and not me. Mansell was fired in June, and he still refers to him in July and August as the secretary of council.
And when was that email sent?
I don't know the date.
And did it transmit the copy of the legislation that is in front of the board that has the transmittal letter, the veto message letter dated August 10th?
The email date was way beyond August 10th. And I think there were two dates on the legislation and the so-called veto that he submitted. And on his veto, he identified as, I believe it is Corinne Stevenson and Councilor Gowdy. I don't know why he identified Corinne Stevenson.
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Brewer, you know what was provided to the board as far as the veto,
Yes,
and that is what was provided to Corinne Stevenson through email.
I think it was, yes.
Just her? Because she's not the council president,
He's
correct?
not the council president and Mansell Baker is not the secretary. Anything he addresses to them is just not relevant. And in order to sign the legislation, so what happens with the legislation, when I was mayor of East Cleveland, I would sign the legislation at the council meeting. He has chosen not to interact with me, so he doesn't sign the legislation at the council meeting. Then if he doesn't sign it there, he gets to sign it in the council office in front of me because I have to retain custody of the original records. I can't just let them go out anywhere. I have to retain custody. That's in our administrative code. So I retain custody, let him know that he can sign them. He who chooses not to, we move on after the 7 days that he doesn't sign the legislation. The charter says that he shall return it in 7 days. And if not, it shall proceed as if it was passed. So when he doesn't sign it, we proceed as if it's passed. And if you look at the authentic legislation that was submitted 5723, it has right here, the legislative history. Right here at the bottom of the thing.
So you're representing to us that the mayor returned the legislation unsigned.
He did not,
He didn't.
so it's not signed by, so it's just his
It's
signature.
just- it's
Correct. All these signatures have to be on it. Okay. He can't send legislation out and say it's authentic with just his signature. That's not authentic. That's a fraudulent document.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just, I think the operative language of the charter is if the mayor does not approve it, the legislation, he or she shall return it with a statement of his, return it with a statement of his or her objections to council, who shall enter the mayor's objections in his journal. So I think that there's two factual situations, a return of the legislation and whether it was to council. And I think the board needs to feel comfortable that that did not occur.
I can tell you it was not returned and it was not returned to council.
Any questions for Mr. Booth? Yes,
Especially since I had the original in the council office, and if he wanted to sign it, he had to come down to the council office to do that, which he did not do.
all right, well, thank you, Mr. Brewer.
You're welcome.
Our chair recognize Mayor King or any representatives thereof, if they're available. Actually, the mayor is here. I see Ms. Simmons. Who is going to speak on behalf of Mayor King? Ms. Simmons? Chair recognizes you. I know you're on Zoom. You need to unmute yourself, please.
Yes, I believe an attorney, Charles Tyler is there as well. Is he in the room?
She's not speaking to the mayor. Okay, then you can put yourself on mute. Mr. King, the chair will recognize you. You can approach the podium, sir. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Sir, would you please state your name and address for the record, and then we'll have the court reporter swear you in. Thank you.
Brandon King, Brandon, King, King, permanent place of residence, 1735 Elsinore, Elsinore, East Cleveland, Ohio, 44112.
Thank you, sir.
Every time I leave, I plan to return.
All right, we'll have the court reporter swear you in.
Let's raise your hand, please. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. King, we have before us a discussion on East Cleveland Charter issue number 48, which is on the November 7th, 2023 ballot. We've heard from Mr. Brewer, and we wanted to extend you the opportunity to let us know your side of what has transpired so that we can proceed accordingly. So the floor, sir, is yours.
thank you. The subject at hand, I was at the council meeting in which it was, I believe it was on the agenda and it was voted on. As you may well be aware, there are a number of seats, 2 seats, in fact, that are in the court of law to determine who rightfully has those seats. The individuals who passed it, and this needs 4 votes, 2 of them are votes from those 2 seats that are in question in the court. So those 2 do not count. As a matter of precaution, the law department made what is a letter of an intent to veto. There were about 4 pieces of legislation that were passed that night. So she made 4 separate letters of an intent to veto just to avoid any such situation as this. We created those, I signed them within the 7-day period and sent them down. Sent them down via email and hand delivered them.
And who, sir, did you deliver those documents to?
Put them up under the door. There's very rarely someone there.
And whose door would that have been?
The city council's office.
Were they addressed to a specific person, the president, or?
Yes. Addressed to the council president, who legally is Corinne Stevenson.
And that's whose door you put them under?
Yes, there's only one door for council, right? The email, which I'd be more than willing to share with you, goes to Corinne Stevenson, and it goes to the legally recognized council secretary, a person by the name of Mansell Baker.
And Mr. Baker received these documents as well?
Yes, via email, and we put them under the door.
And what date would that have been, sir?
I don't have the documents in front of me. Willa can probably help me if she has those documents.
Are you doing that? I'll yield to my fellow board members. Have a question, Mr. Wilson?
So you did not send it to all of council? in other words, it was clearly two who, I know you were saying there's a dispute, it's in the court. As far as this board, this is the board's decision to, decide that, it is with the court.
Absolutely.
And so, looking at your charter language and knowing there's these disputes, it does appear you did, I guess, send to Stevenson and, the other individual dates.
Yes, so Madam, I sent it to the legally recognized counselors, the legally recognized president, Corinne Stevenson, the legally recognized secretary, Marcel Baker,
Yeah.
the legally
Well,
recognized
when you
counsel.
say
Why
legally
need it?
recognized, I mean, we do acknowledge there's a case pending, so there was no decision, just to be clear, there's been no decision from the state, like, we're looking at the 8th district.
Yes, so you're asking me, who did I send it to?
Yes,
Juanita Gowdy,
okay,
Patricia Bahoviak,
Mm.
Nathaniel Martin, and Mark McLean. So 5 counselors plus 1 secretary, and I also included the city's law department. I can send you that email from my phone. I can forward it to
should
you.
have that, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mr. Messer.
Not to interrupt, Mr. Sticken.
Yeah.
But what did you provide those individuals?
Me?
Yeah.
I provided them an email in which it had 4 or 5 attachments, all of the intent to veto the legislation that they had believingly think they passed, but they did not pass. Just to head off any confusion, it was an intent to veto. I sent them 4 separate pieces of documents with the legislation.
What we have is a letter stating the reasons for a veto and an attachment, which is a piece of draft legislation.
Yes, so there should be 4 on that same email, should be 4 or 5 separate documents.
Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I don't. Not positive. I know we have the letter, we have the transmittal email.
Yeah, I did.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
The letter.
So he's scrolling the email.
Yeah, what I've seen, Mr. Chairman, is a transmittal letter attaching the draft legislation stating the reasons for the intent to veto, and then the mayor's signature on the draft legislation dated the
15,
right.
yeah.
Yes, and I did indicate intent to veto.
I think then we have what the board is seeing what was provided.
Yeah, we saw this,
Yes, you are.
like,
Thank you. Any other
no,
questions
I
for
think.
Mr. King? Yeah. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I think we're good.
We've heard from Mayor King, we've heard from Mr. Brewer. The discussion has been held. Again, this is not a hearing.
Yeah.
As we look at the agenda, we see that issue 48 for East Cleveland is currently on the ballot. As is, the director represented to us that Uocava voters already received the ballot with that language on it. And he's had the opportunity to presumably act on that. So therefore, without any action from this board, then issue 48 will remain on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot.
Your Honor, may I? Chair,
Who's speaking, please?
Willa Hemmons.
Okay, yes, Ms. Emmons.
Yes, if you look at before you make that decision, we would like to make some remarks. As you know, the certification has to be done.
Wait a
Bye.
second, wait a second, wait a second.
I have a board member that's asked for a point of order. Chair recognizes Ms. Stickett.
Yeah, well, first of all, she needs to clarify what position she's speaking on, because she is also, she's representing herself as the law director, but I know there's a dispute as to that too, which we should put on the record. And secondly, I think she needs to clarify who she's speaking for before she begins her comment.
Okay, you've heard the unreadiness from the board. Would you speak to those issues raised by Ms. Stickett?
Yes, I am the legally recognized law director and have been since 2016. And that was ratified by the Court of Appeals already in an interlocutory decision by Michelle Sheehan in case number 23-112477. Okay, so I hope that clarifies that. I sent materials to the board's counsel. Also, the charter, as the law director, I had determined that Mr. Brewer was not legally the clerk of council, and he sought a review of that in the court in case number CV 23-981131, where he sought a declaratory relief declaring that he was the lawfully appointed clerk.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Point of order. In the interest of time, who are you speaking on behalf of? We don't need all of these.
Oh, okay. I'm speaking on behalf of the city of East Cleveland as the law director. And I'm just citing the cases that clarify the position that Mr. Brewer is not the clerk of council legally. And our charter requires that any matters that.
Ms. Simmons, that's not what this body is considering at this point. So I'm going to ask you to go back on mute. I will, it's a courtesy.
Can I say one more thing?
Just go on mute for 1 second, please. The
Okay.
Chair will recognize Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. So there are a number of issues that are in front of the court to be determined.
Right.
The court has determined that Willa Hemmings and Heather are the law department of the city of East Cleveland. They have made that determination. The court has also made the determination that there is no clerk of council.
Okay.
The court has made those decisions.
Let me cut this right here, okay? We're not here to determine that, okay? What we're here to discuss is item number 6 about issue 48 on the November 7th, 2023 ballot, okay? That's the only focus right here.
Mr. Chairman.
So based on where we have had this discussion right now, unless the board takes action, that issue remains on the ballot. That's the only piece that we're discussing right now. So I'm going to ask the board, is there anything that the board needs to add to the discussion that we've had on item 6?
Well, I think the legal issue, since the ballot was sent out, this was on the ballot, and since this was sent, that's something that we were discussing. So some of our issues we have to look at is once the ballot's mailed out and a voter's turning to vote on it, that's a factor we look at. So I guess, do you have anything maybe to say as to that point?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So from a legal perspective, I'm not sure how it could have been put on the ballot. There is no clerk of council. So a document like that could not have come to you. We were here earlier in the year and we had the same discussion. And this body said, per the charter of East Cleveland, if there's no clerk of council, we cannot accept anything from the city. So how can you accept this if there's no clerk of council?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I think the argument of whether there's a clerk is a derivative issue of what's in front of the Court of Appeals right now. The contention that Mr. Brewer was not appointed the clerk is because they contest whether or not those council people have the authority to elect a president, who have the authority to appoint the clerk. So it all stems from the 8th district litigation that a decision is pending. It's fully briefed as of the 1st of September. So hopefully the court will provide clarity and we can move forward once there's a decision from the people with authority to determine that question.
Once there's a decision.
As of
May
right
I?
now,
Excuse me, Chair recognizes Board Member McCarron.
Mr. Mayor, where I'm having difficulty in this whole thing is we have a copy of the signed resolution. And there is a spot for you to mark whether you veto or not, sign it. And as your charter claims, state your reservations and you could have reiterated all these same points and said, I am not approving this legislation for the following reasons, A, B, C, D. We don't have a court of courts, these people aren't really competent, therefore I veto. This would have been a lot simpler.
Yes. Mr. Chairman,
May
can I address that? So these 4 pieces of legislation never came upstairs, right? The standard operating procedure is that once it passes, the secretary clerk brings it up from city council. Once they get the signature of the president and the clerk or the secretary in this case, then they bring them upstairs for the administration and the law director's signature. These never came upstairs. At the very next council meeting, right, which would have been the council meeting that they have to then override the veto, none of these 4 pieces were on there. And that was videotaped. Willa made a question as to why they didn't even try to override the vetoes that we had sent down. These documents never came upstairs. That is why they're absent of my signature and the law director's signature.
And for clarity, sir.
And may I?
upstairs, this is your office?
Yes,
Okay, I want to be clear. The
they
chair-
never came upstairs.
Yeah, so, Ms. Simmons, have you
Yes.
say one word? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Am I unmuted? Okay.
Yes, you're. we can hear
First of all, we knew that they probably would not give us the legislation. So we took what we had from the purported agenda and we made the veto letter. We sent it by courier, that is the police department. We had a police officer deliver to each and every council person the veto. Not only was it slipped under the door, but it was delivered to each council person's house. Also, because not just the 8th district, but Mr. Brewer specifically asked for a declaratory judgment legitimizing his role as clerk of council, and that court refused in case number CV 23-981131.
All right,
Therefore,
thank you, Ms.
you
Simmons.
cannot
Okay,
certify-
Ms. Simmons,
yes,
thank you. I'm going to end the discussion here. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Musson, and then we will proceed. Yeah.
this is the first time we've heard that the legislation wasn't presented to the mayor. And there is a provision in the charter that says every ordinance resolution passed by council shall be signed by its president or vice president and shall be presented forthwith to the mayor by the clerk. So can Mr. Brewer clarify whether or not he presented the legislation to the mayor?
Okay, that's a question for Mr. Brewer. Mr. Chair recognizes Mr. Brewer. Just direct,
Then can I have a
direct question to Mr.
Yes or no?
The legislation, the way that we do business is that the mayor, at the end of the council meeting, has the opportunity to sign the legislation. We present the legislation to the mayor and he chooses not to interact with me. So the legislation is not signed.
Excuse me.
Additionally, there
Excuse
is no such thing as an intent to veto in the charter. So he has stated himself that he did not send a veto, he sent an intent to veto to a fired ex-employee, Mansell Baker, who was fired in June. He said he did this in August.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the question is whether or not the legislation was presented to the forthwith to the mayor by the clerk. Yes or no?
It was presented at the council meeting.
no,
To the
that's
mayor.
not true.
You weren't there. Excuse me, she was there. That's not true. She
Mr.
wasn't there.
Musson.
Mr. Brewer, are you representing that you presented the legislation signed by the president or vice president to the mayor?
I have correspondence telling Willie Hemmons to have the mayor come down to the
No,
council
that
office
is
and sign
not.
the
I'm
legislation.
trying to get a yes or no question.
Excuse me, can she be muted? She's
So you're either gonna have to mute your phone or excuse you from
And
the
she's
meeting.
not representing the city. You got 4 members of council
Mr. Brewer, there's a
circulating
yes or no
petitions.
question on the floor from the
I think he
council.
said.
Did you present,
As I've stated in the past, as I stated here,
that's not a yes or no. Did you present the legislation signed by the president or vice president to the mayor?
not directly. I sent it to Willie Hemmons, telling her that the mayor needed to sign this legislation down in the council office.
So he did contact the law director to indicate that the legislation.
That's-
And we had that.
That's
we had
not
that-
true.
And we had that conversation in the clerk's office.
She just keeps interrupting.
I'm gonna ask our technician
He is
to
now.
remove. You okay?
And she testified here in February that she was fired on the 13th.
Let me ask you, the chair wants to talk to Mr. Muffin. Is there any other line of questioning, sir, you have for either of our persons?
No, thank you, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, there being no other line of questioning, the discussion is before us.
Mr. Chairman, I have one pertinent thing.
Not hearing.
This is, again, so it's before us. Again, this is simply a discussion, and so I'm gonna move to end discussion on this topic. With the understanding that with no action from the board, that issue 48 will remain on the ballot as it currently is.
Mr.
Is there
Chairman,
a second to that motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, it is so ordered, and that discussion is over. We are now moving on to item number 7.
Yes.
We have before us certification of East Cleveland mayoral recall, and I will turn over to the director for live.
We received notification from Eric Brewer that individuals per their charter for petitions from the clerk's office circulated, returned back to the clerk's office. And then the clerk, pursuant to their charter, reviewed those petitions for compliance and sufficiency with the terms of the charter. Based on that, Eric Brewer provided notice pursuant to the charter to Mayor King, who is the subject of the recall petitions, making him aware of that, and then provided the notice period, 5 days of opportunity to resign. Board of Elections was copied on that letter dated September 20th from Eric Brewer to Mayor King of that. We then received yesterday, after the expiration of that window, another documentation from Eric Brewer saying that Mayor King did not submit his resignation, and then pursuant to the charter, filed this with the board, and then as the Board of Elections per their charter that sets the date of the elections, further the time parameter established in the charter, the 60 to 90 day window. Looking at that and our operations, we here at the staff decided that December 5th is the day in which we can conduct a successful election. It falls within the window established within the charter, and what comes before the board now is to go ahead and certify that issue for that election date.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Musson, anything that you would like to add from a legal perspective?
No, the board's role, this is purely ministerial. There's no discretion involved. Board needs to act based on the certification provided.
Very well, sir. I move certification of the East Cleveland mayoral recall election issue and establishing said recall election on December 5th, 2023.
Second.
Second. All in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. It is so ordered. Thank you. Election officials, the chair recognizes Rebecca Brink. You can be, we're done with your portion of the meeting. Thank you, sir.
Good
Hey,
morning.
good morning.
Becky Brake, manager of the election officials department. This is the PDO performance review for the August 8th special election. You guys should have the performance summary and the performance report. overall, the workers did well in the August election, even with the implementation of new equipment and the recruitment things that we faced in August elections. Our workers are often on scheduled vacations, and so we have a lot of new people that we have to put into the fold. According to the criteria set forth by the Ohio Election Officials Manual, as well as the feedback we gather from our call center, post-election surveys from workers and voters and our internal staff, this is what we've come up with for the report. We had a total of 3,404 workers. And we have our determined future appointments for those workers. Anyone not included in this listing is just being placed back where they were previously. Promoting 6 workers, relocating 18, remove 15, 39 on watch, and 10 demotions. We did require all workers to attend training this election because of the new equipment, and we offered online review, and we have Zoom sessions the week leading up to the election that have hot topics of things to discuss with workers, and it's open to all workers. Due to some of the issues that we ran into with the ballot scanners, we didn't gather all the typical data that we would, but we have plans in place to address those for November. We did have all 291 polling locations open on time. 100% of locations completed the oath of office. And 100% reported their problems with equipment and or low ballot supply correctly. The typical number of provisional ballot errors increased a little bit in the wrong precinct, wrong location category. So we'll be addressing that in our hands-on training on the EPB with the precinct lookup, going a little further into that for the November election. The overall performance seems a little bit lower in August elections in general, which I kind of already mentioned why we see that. But our next steps that we're taking to improve for these numbers for the November election would be updating the new equipment supplemental guide based on lessons learned from August. We created a new training video with processes and procedures for troubleshooting the new equipment. We're requiring all workers to return for a lessons learned training from the August election, online or in person. And holding practice makes perfect sessions closer to election day for the VLMs and the VLDs. And continue to focus on policies and procedures that were impacted by House Bill 458 that was passed at the beginning of this year. And collaborating with the other departments to improve the reporting on the post-election items that we need for the performance review.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from the board? I have a couple of the 81 locations, one or more, I got 28%, and then 20 locations didn't complete the ballot accounting process. Are you reaching out specifically to those locations and those PEOs to rectify that?
Yes, we reach out to the individual locations, letting them know where their downfalls were and coaching those workers up for next elections. Or making other determinations based on performance, maybe those locations had in other areas. And we also send every worker a grade sheet telling them how they did on this, how they scored on these reports. And give them a little bit more information about what they can do to not make the same mistakes in the future if possible.
And I know it's hard to quantify with so many people, but of the people that are kind of on watch, did some of those fall into these locations?
Oh, yeah. On watch, a lot of times we're trying to move them to see if they would work better with other workers. So, and we're being more stringent about the on watch process now, where when they're on watch, we're really, going back and reassessing if they can be taken off watch even yet. They may be on watch for more than one election.
Well, thank you, members of the board. All right, thank you, Ms. Brake. I move to acknowledge the PEO performance report for the August 8th, 2023 special election. Second by Mr. McCaffrey. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank
All right, on the fiscal, the chair recognizes Ms. Shakita Walker. Morning.
Good morning. So on the fiscal agenda, the first item we have is a resolution to approve a voucher with Clear Ballot. This is for the purchase of 12 imprinters to be utilized with our scanning equipment. The total cost for this procurement is $31,920. We did not do a formal process in order for us to not violate our warranty with our new ballot equipment and to maintain integrity of the equipment. We purchased this equipment directly from, are going to purchase directly from Clear Ballot to maintain the integrity of the new equipment and the warranty therefore.
Mr. Director.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna, and I add, it's all correct, I mean, just take a little bit more of what this actually does. This
Okay.
printer. And so our central account scanners, which are multi-mail scanners, are manufactured by Fujitsu, purchased through Clear Ballot certified equipment. And now this, and so what happens is when the ballot department scans all your multi-mail ballots, it goes through and it puts a sequential numbering system within its system as they go through to kind of like this is batch A, so A1, A2, A3, and it goes through. And if there happens to be when they scan a ballot that needs to have additional review, some kind of remake, because there's an overvote or there's something that qualifies for that. The system will report that, for example, ballot A15 needs addressing. And so what we did in this last election is then what you do is you go and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you get to ballot 15 and you can look at it, because of the picture, and guess that is in fact it. What the imprinter does is it takes that same sequential system that the system is already doing, and it puts a light that coding on the ballot, not anywhere near where the markings are or anything like that, but it'll do A1, A2, A3, A4, and so on. So now when the system says A15 needs review, you don't have, you can still count 15 ballots. You can also flip through and go, there's A15. System says A15, ballot A15, and there you go. Makes it a lot easier based on the volume. That's what we have. So a lot of Clear Ballot's customers, they have purchased this after they've used their system for one election. It wasn't part of the funding process that we got from the state. This is a standalone kind of ancillary item. And so we did, working with Mark, and we talked with Clear Ballot, what we want to make sure is that this piece of equipment, while not expensive, is attached to a certified piece of equipment that it falls under our maintenance plan, the long-term negotiation that we had. And there was agreement with the parties that, for example, if this piece of printer were to malfunction, it does not void or warrant or any way negatively impact the warranty on the main piece of equipment, which is still covered by our maintenance agreement. So we went through, we did all of that. Talked to one or two counties that has this in printer, and it's a game changer. So we did purchase one per piece of equipment. And it'll be something that'll just make us better going forward. And as Sean Keith said, certified equipment. So we are purchasing these, and Fujitsu makes it. We're purchasing it through Clear Ballot. A Clear Ballot beam technician will install it on there, and away we go.
It's under their warranty and maintenance.
So this little piece, if it breaks, is on its own warranty, not part of a bigger piece, but it won't. And so we would have to replace this. But if in some manner, some harm is made to the bigger, more expensive piece, that none of that is voided or negated. That stays in place, because we wouldn't purchase this that negatively impact that. So we got our confirmations that it doesn't.
That makes sense.
Second, Mr. McCafferty. All right, thank you, Ms. Walker. I move the approval of the voucher and resolution for FIS-B-A Clear Ballot Group Inc. for imprinters. Second by Mr. McCafferty. All in favor, aye. Ayes have it. Ms. Walker.
So the next item on our agenda is the authorization for the director to enter into a MOU with the Secretary of State, County Council, and County Executive for the purchase of the new electronic poll books and the equipment to go with those. As you know, we received money from the Secretary of State for the purchase of the new electronic poll books. We reached out to the approved vendors that the state has identified. 10X is our vendor of choice, who we currently have a relationship with our current poll books. They provided us with the quote for the cost of the poll books. So now that we have the cost of $1,046,283, we need to proceed with the procurement of obtaining the poll books, getting the memorandum signed, because ultimately to be given to Cuyahoga County and through Director Pilati for the Board of Elections. So we want to get the process started. 10X informed us there's going to be a lead time for the preparation of the software and equipment for the poll books. We need to get it signed by county executive, county council, as they're in a process of year-end closeout. We want to get this on their agenda radar to say that we want to start the process. We're going to need to get the order in this year and pay for it next year in 2024. In order to do that, we have to get the authorization from you guys to begin the process.
All right, Director.
Yeah, and so 10X has been a good electronic poll book vendor. And so I think we made the right decision when we did this back in 16, and actually we're seeing more boards across the state transition to 10X, which reaffirming that you made the right call, that they've been good with us. What this does is really it's the same application, it's the same software that a poll worker and a voter sees. That stays the same. It's the hardware, it's the electronic poll book. One of the bonuses of this is that we purchased initially a iPad Mini 2. It was kind of end of life, and with the funding at that point, that's what we could afford, and it's smaller. This book will be that instead of an end of life unit, it's a 10th generation iPad, so it's still live, active, and good. It's about, the screen is almost about 3 inches bigger diagonally. So as far as from the poll workers viewing it, the voters viewing it, you have a bigger display screen. It's going to look the same. That stays in place. But with that, that means all the metal stands that we have don't work. So they have to have a bigger stand to accommodate this. All the cases, all the foam that's in there that's cut doesn't work. So those are the things, the hardware. Now this pricing goes through Department of Administrative Services. It's certified equipment, so they have to be certified through voting machine examiners and Secretary of State's office. And there's 3 vendors participating. They submitted their bids into the Ohio Department of Administrative Services and came up basically with set pricing. So that's actually what your ceiling is for all these items. So that makes the process easier for us to engage, because you're just kind of picking off the list and going and doing that. Another great part of this is that when we initially got the poll books, we entered into a 10-year maintenance and licensing agreement with 10X. We still have, we have 3 years of renewal after this. That contract extends over to this because it is the same software and will apply to this. So that contract, we don't need to do anything with that. And so we will be able to write out the maintenance and licensing of that about 2027, I think. So that's kind of nice that we don't have that negotiation again, because it's just hardware and different software. It is about 90 days or so to get this equipment ordered, manufactured. When it comes to us, 10X will put it together. And then, you may not believe this, but government sometimes can be bureaucratic. And so this then going down to the county council and county executive, there's a process there. Processes are good. It's for the safety of the citizens, but that all takes time. So we're trying to push both of these things together at the same time, and it all starts here. With this, the memorandum of understanding is boilerplate language that all 88 counties have. So we don't negotiate that. We just kind of change it from a county commissioner to council executive signatures. And Mark works with the law director to make those changes to the document. So it's a positive thing. We do have the oldest books in the state. So it'd be nice to go from the oldest books to some of the newest books. It really helps with the security profile too, because our current books, they're iPads. Cap out at iOS version 12. Now we'll be able to go to iOS 16, which is much better for us. So that's what we're doing with, is getting the authorization to go ahead and do this, so then we can go down to the county administration ability to go through that process.
Thank you. Hearing all that, I'll move the authorization for the director to enter into the memorandum of understanding with the Secretary of State's office as delineated in item 10 of the agenda. Second by Mr. McCafferty. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Ms. Walker, you're still with us. All right.
Let's do it. So last week, at the last board meeting, rather, I presented to the board, we went over and reviewed our recommendation for our 2024-2025 biennial budget. We wanted to, open the floor to any questions, comments you have regarding the budget, and hopefully seek your approval today.
Thank you. And we had a comprehensive overview at the last meeting, and then we had time to review the document. I'll yield to my board members to see if they have any questions, comments, or concerns related to the document that was provided.
I thought it was good job laying out. I thought it was well done.
Yes, very good. Director?
Yeah, just a brief, so a lot of things happen fast, right?
Yeah.
So in that week's time, budget office has informed us that through the county executives, some of what the executives are gonna put in, some of the numbers are gonna be a little bit less than what we have in this document.
Okay.
And we're not the only agency that they're doing that. However, we are not changing our numbers. I would like for the board to approve these numbers, and then, because ultimately council has a say, and I will go before. In normal practice, I'll have to do a presentation. I'm going to explain why these numbers, because John Kita with Patrick McAlay can say, look here's the spreadsheet. These are all the services and the items and the things, and guess what? You hit some, and that's what we need. So, council does not just rubber stamp what the county executive puts forward when it comes to the budget process. They engage in a real process, and they want to make sure that agencies have what they need to do the job, and we will go ahead and do that. And in addition, none of our, they told us none of our new initiatives will be presented with funding in the executive budget. Again, those are in there, and the same thing. So one, I will make sure that they have enough money to operate. And after that, then I'm gonna fight for those, and it's only a handful of initiatives, and I think they're smart, good initiatives to try to see what we can get with that.
Thank you. I move the approval of the 2024-2025 recommended biennial budget. Second by Mr. McCafferty. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. Walker.
Yeah.
All right, on our human resources agenda, I move the reclassification from community outreach coordinator, community outreach department to instructional training coordinator, election officials department. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McCafferty. Director, could you just give us more context to this, please?
Sure. I actually, so I will do that, and we'll send you an email afterwards. That we had a document that HR put together, but basically. What we're doing is we're taking a current vacant position, community outreach coordinator. And that was actually a position that Skip had before he became the clerk, and we haven't filled that with a permanent. So we have our three positions that we run with in community outreach. This does not impact the position that is just become vacant by Alia Burgos, the bilingual coordinator. That's not this position.
This is different.
That's a different role. That will
Coordinator,
be,
yeah.
yeah, and that'll be posted and rehired.
Okay.
And that will be hired with the understanding a bilingual individual and all that, so we can stay in compliance with the Department of Justice wants for us. So this is a fourth position. We want to reclassify it to instructional and training coordinator, seeing the 8th grade, seeing budget impact. So and this is something that we want for a little bit. It's really become apparent as we have new equipment to go forward. And this position would be housed in our poll worker department, and will be focused on adult learning and creating, while they do a good job in the department, we don't have someone who we hired who has a skill set to create the quick reference guides and the training manual and the PowerPoints and all those with the eyes of adult learning, so. Teaching someone at a 5th grade level who, but they are adults and getting it across with all this information and not having that mix of how do you get through. So ultimately like to go to like universities and things like that, get people who have education type backgrounds to come in and do this position. We always change the training, we can always do it better, there's always new either law changes or equipment, so even like these electronic poll books, while it's still the same software, if it looks different, we need to do a little different. We wanna be stronger with that. Once we get stronger in that part, what we also want to do is we can do more as far as creating content that we can use to. When we bring in temporary employees, whether it's election night or long-term or, do provisionals, some training content to make it easier for them to do those things. Or on election night, when we bring all these people in to do different tasks, have simple things that we can hand out for there. And eventually have things that we can put on our website, send out through social media that will not only be beneficial to poll workers, but also to the voters. So like we had a video that we borrowed from another county that we did at the beginning of the year to talk about some of the House Bill 458 changes. It was a nice little thing that within, a minute and a half to 2 minutes, you can watch it and you learn a lot of stuff. So we want to be able to have someone who can, again, put together those types of things. Bread and butter is the worker training, and then, but there's other benefits to it, to the whole agency. So that's what we want to do with this. We think it's a better utilization of this vacancy. Now, community outreach is extremely important, but what we've been doing this past year, in addition to our permanents, is we've been bringing on more temporary employees, because you have a certain number of people you need here to create things, coordinate, but then when you have all different events, that's where you need to grow your ranks and send people out to do that for voter registration day and all those other types of things. And so we've created this group that we can scale up and grow to meet those needs. So that's what we want to do with this. And I would say that, Henry being definitely involved in the department, I think understands what this, because we actually had some folks who kind of specialized on this before and we kind of got away from it. Again, the department does a good job, but it's not we don't have someone who's been trained with that specific skill set. So that's what we want to do. So what we would, if it's reclassified, then working with HR, we will post it externally, and go through that process of filling that.
And to your point, we've had this in the agency before, so it's kind of going back to something that we did about. And as I've said before, that voter education, poll worker training are hand in hand. So a lot of the things that we're communicating to the poll workers, they're communicated to the voters, because simple logic. If all poll workers are voters, then the better education you give the voters when they become poll workers, they'll already know. So I think that we can use these and marry those two, where the message is consistent on both sides of the table.
Yeah, and I think a great example is you got to train poll workers in how to use the electronic poll book.
Right.
But there should be something where, from a voter perspective, if they've never used one, take away the fear, they can watch something, so then they know here's what's going on, when it flips back and forth and what their responsibility is. And you're right, there's actually joint responsibility between the parties.
So from a financials, we can get a lot of mileage out of this, and Mike West doesn't always lose out on this, so he can use a lot of this stuff too. So-
Exactly.
So we're not taking it from one to
Yeah.
the other. Yeah. All right, board members, any other questions? We do have a motion on the floor.
No.
Second.
All right, second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. We are on to new business director, deputy director.
You heard enough from me for.
All right, deputy director. Good morning. Wake up.
Good meeting. Just to give you a brief update on, as you know, we've been, because of all the new development we've had in the area, it has become increasingly challenging for us to get sufficient parking space for voters to come during early in-person voting. So as we look towards the November election, until we're able to get into a new building, and that is one of the main reasons we are working with the county to get a new facility, is because of the current parking situation. We were extremely fortunate that the old Bryan and Stratton building is kind of in between usages right now. And during this limited period of time, we're working with the county, and the county was able to make arrangements for us to utilize the Bryan and Stratton parking facility to help supplement our parking for our early in-person voters. We are in the final stages of finalizing that contract with them. In addition, the county has worked with Campus International to utilize their parking space for us to be able to utilize it for early in-person voting as well. And their teachers will be parking temporarily in the Bryan and Stratton facility, therefore opening up space for voters to utilize it. So at this point, we're looking to utilize both facilities to some level for voters for the early in-person voting process. We're also, in working with the county, we're dealing with things and addressing proper signage, so voters will become aware of where those parking spots are, as well as Director Prelati through his Facebook Live and community outreach will be communicating that through our website. We'll be communicating to voters where those parking spaces are. In addition, we'll also make arrangements to have an eye in the sky, a security camera on the lot there, and as well as putting our variable signage that the highway type sign that will say parking here. In addition to that, just to clarify, so our current BOE parking lot will be utilized for accessible ADA parking, so they'll be able to utilize that for voting, as well as it'll keep area clear for our drop box for traffic as it's coming in, as well as during this time period, we do have candidates who will be filing their campaign finance reports, so they need to be able to come in and do business with the board as well. So, and then just to kind of expand from there, the front door, the Euclid entrance will be utilized. That will be our voter entrance for voters to come into the building. With that, we are putting up a tent from the door to the along the sidewalk to the street there, just to help bring a little bit of covering in case the weather gets a little bit inclement and the line extends out to there. But those in general are where we are with it, and we're continuing to make preparation. But again, the core issues with this facility, you know, where we're currently at, will become increasingly challenging as we move forward. So that's why we're looking forward to continuing to work with the county and proceed with a new facility for us for early in-person voting, as well as all our other processes.
All right, thank you, sir. Anything else? All right, there being no other new business before us. Yes,
Next
Ms.
question. This is under new business. I understand there's legislation at the State House with respect to the Cleveland ballot initiative, with respect to budget. If you're familiar with what I'm talking about, how does that impact us with respect to, you know, this passes? And I guess, is there anything this body would do? I just wanted to know if that's.
No, I don't believe so. I believe if the state passes legislation in an attempt to undermine a charter amendment, the charter amendment would still be on the books, but its validity or enforceability would be under question.
Okay.
Assuming it gets adopted and assuming the state passes
Okay.
an act.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify, because I know that's something that may be happening, I think even this week or testimony, so just wanted to kind of clarify that.
Thank you.
I don't have any detail, but yesterday evening, the redistricting commission
Oh, the new maps, yeah.
passed maps. So, you know, as far as next steps and things like that, Secretary of State will give us guidance on what we need to do, but we'll work on that in our slow time. But we definitely will, you know, we'll get that guidance. We'll see how we have to proceed, because that would December 20th, I believe, is the filing deadline for the March primary.
Yeah,
And these maps would be relevant to that and how we update our systems to view the petition signatures and all the other kind of
Right.
processes with that. So stay tuned. So we'll see what happens with that. And I just want to also just make sure you're paying attention. There are bad news here, not fun, but there is right now doesn't go into 2024, but there is a January 2nd board meeting.
Okay,
And not because that's when we want it, but because of that is the deadline, 78 days before the election.
January 2nd, you said?
Yeah, and which you have to certify the candidate, so the deadline is December 20th. And then the January 2nd is that date, so
Tuesday, January 2nd.
put that on your
Would that be 9:30 still, I'm assuming?
That's only if the bowl games don't go into overtime.
Ah,
But it would be not.
all right.
And
Alright.
also trying to do, and we won't wait for a meeting for this, but working with staff to try to at least have all the dates associated with that election. So we can get that out to you now, like what February, what March,
That'd be
what
nice.
April, it
Thank you.
looks like.
Yeah.
So hopefully, again, that might just be Mary sending out an email. So. we'll
That
work
makes
on
sense.
All right, any other new business before us? Hearing none, I did receive a request from Juanita Gowdy. Is Juanita Gowdy present? I believe she left. She left, okay. Well, there being no public comment, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCaffrey, all in favor, aye.
Hi.
Aye, the ayes have it. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Good job, Chairman.
Yeah, nice time.
I had.